Is this going to go down as one of RCB's greatest ever IPL campaigns? But come the 2025 season, irrespective of what the result is going to be, this season has been an absolute team performance from RCB's point of view. Not only have their openers stepped up, but even the finishers, even the middle order batters, the fast bowlers, the spinners, it has been a combined effort this year for the RCB. And unlike RCB teams from the past, this wasn't the most star-studded lineup, and that is something that a lot of fans will agree upon. But that doesn't change the fact that this is probably the most balanced squad that RCB has ever had. So what is it that made this RCB team so strong, so balanced, and what are the things that the management ensured they got right to ensure that RCB makes it to the IPL final? This is all we'll talk about in this video, but before that, definitely hit that subscribe button. Now we'll roughly divide this video into 3 segments. The first being the identification of problems that the RCB had from the previous seasons, the second part being what they did or what they decided in the auction as well as strategy wise to ensure that they would be able to plug these problems, and thirdly looking at stats and how these problems have been solved. Broadly speaking, there were 5 points that could be used to address the problems that RCB had, and more than them being problems, these were things that needed to be taken care of to ensure that an IPL team has a good season. Now with RCB, you do know that they are an outfit that plays a lot of their games at the M Chinnaswamy, which happens to be their home ground. And one of the toughest things here has been for the bowlers to come in and ball well. That's simply because of the ground dimensions and how good the batting pitch has been over the years. Considering all of this, something that the team management had to ensure was that they had good opening bowlers as well as good spinners. Other than that, coming to the batting side of things, the one thing that RCB has always done is that they've been top order heavy. Most of the runs that have been scored have been by the top 3 batters, and this is a trend we've seen even up until 2024 with Faf du Plessis and Virat Kohli getting the bulk of the runs. And so what would generally happen is that the lower middle order or the middle order would not get enough exposure or just not have the confidence to go out and score those runs. And this meant that there was definitely a hole when it came to the finishing of things, and this is where RCB struggled, particularly in the 2024 IPL season. Lastly, and something that is characteristic of a lot of teams that have done well in the IPL, the likes of the Chennai Super Kings or the Mumbai Indians, is that they've had experienced campaigners who know how to win IPL trophies, and more than that, there's also a blend of this experience along with youth. Hey Aswin, what is the status on those RCB data points?
Bro, you will not believe this. I've got Insta Reels uploading, 4K footage rendering, and 6 tabs open on my laptop, and everything's running smooth.
Bro, since we switched to Axe Smart Wi-Fi, network stress is not an issue anymore. Multitasking can be done all the time, and that too for the same cost, there's better performance.
Yeah, no hidden charges or upgrades. Axe Zippy handles everything. It learns what we do and optimizes the speed for every device in real time.
It literally tries to fix issues even before they happen. It also monitors the network 24/7 like a behind-the-scenes techie.
And managing who's using what, super easy. You can check out and control it all from the app.
Honestly, it's a game changer. This kind of smart Wi-Fi, it's the first time we're seeing it in India.
Any app, anytime, any device, and any location, you get the best Wi-Fi experience. Axe Smart Wi-Fi is built for today's and future's lifestyle.
Regular Wi-Fi feels ancient now. Switch to Axe Smart Wi-Fi, you'll never go back.
So what are you waiting for? Go down to our description, click on the link and learn a lot more about Axe Smart Wi-Fi.
In terms of the number of wins that RCB has gotten this year, that number already stands at 10 wins, which is already their highest ever in a single IPL season. We aren't even talking about the final here, and considering just this fact, RCB has definitely had one of their better seasons. Not only that, but even if you look at their win-loss ratio, it's the best that they've ever had in a single season of the IPL. And this series of victories and the number of victories that the RCB team has gotten has been no fluke. It is something that has been extremely well strategized and planned out by the team management, and in fact they've put out a complete documentary series where they've documented their auction strategy, the discussions they'd had, the pain points that they wanted to address, and how they eventually went about selecting the team for the 2025 season. And this is where one by one we'll start addressing the problems and what RCB has done or what they thought of at the time of strategizing to ensure that they plug these gaps. Now the first thing being the experience point of view, and how teams like a Mumbai Indians or a Chennai Super Kings generally have a good blend of experience and youth. Now in the case of the Royal Challengers Bangalore, this is something that they definitely took care of this season, with them having the second most experienced batting lineup in terms of the number of games that these players have played since 2021, and the third most experienced bowling lineup for the same filters. On average, the top batters of the RCB lineup have played 122 matches each, and the RCB bowlers have played an average of 91 matches. This is data taken from 2021 across T20 leagues, so this would include domestic as well as other franchise leagues and of course the IPL. Not only this, in September of 2023, there was also a change in the management around RCB. You had Andy Flower who was roped in, Mo Bobat had then become the director for RCB, and they also got in Dinesh Karthik in the 2025 season to come in as a mentor. Now, this is very important because at the end of the day, what really matters is, of course, your players performing, but also the execution of plans. In the case of both Mo Bobat as well as Andy Flower, these are two members who have been with the England cricket team for a very long time. And under Bobat, the England team have done extremely well. Not only have they won the T20 World Cup, but they've also won the ODI World Cup and they've also won Ashes. And with Andy Flower, I don't really need to say much. He's one of those coaches of the highest pedigree, and generally it's been good wherever he's been a coach. But the one thing that I especially really liked from RCB's management was the inclusion of Dinesh Karthik. Here's a man who was a part of RCB for the last couple of seasons, in fact played the 2024 season as well, had done well for them and had a rapport with a lot of the players. From there, for him to take up that mentorship role in 2025 augured really well for RCB, simply because of the reason that he had recently played in the IPL. He'd also played in multiple franchise leagues around the world. But not only that, it also helped create a sort of bridge between the likes of Andy Flower and a Mo Bobat, and also Dinesh Karthik and the players themselves. As for the auction strategy and insights, we can roughly divide it into a few pointers that we'll get into. The first of these being that the team management was looking to create a core that would be India heavy. Now, of course, this makes sense simply because of the fact that you can only play 4 overseas players, and so when you already had the retentions of Virat Kohli, Rajat Patidar and Yash Dayal, you wanted to ensure that the remainder of the team would have a core that is more India dominant. The next thing that the team management was looking at is an explosive overseas opener. Now, this could have been an Indian opener as well, as we've seen with the likes of a Priyansh Arya or a Prabhsimran Singh, but in the case of RCB, they were hell-bent on getting an overseas opener, and that's purely because of the kind of data they had available and how certain openers like a Phil Salt or a Will Jacks or a Joss Butler had been able to do across leagues all around the world. It also made sense because Virat Kohli is not the most explosive opener when it comes to T20 cricket, and so it would only be right for the RCB to get in an opener who can complement Virat's style of play to ensure that Virat is able to hold the innings together. And the next point was to look at possible pace options for the RCB. Now, while Yash Dayal was already locked in, RCB still had to lock in 2 to 3 new options for pacers, both overseas as well as Indian options, such that they would be able to ball well not just in the away games but especially at the Chinnaswamy. A problem that most franchisees look to plug as soon as they can is to be able to have bowlers who can take wickets up front. An interesting insight here was how they went about strategizing for this particular thing in terms of how they looked at power play numbers. Usually when we look at power play numbers, we talk about the overs 0 to 6 as a whole, but what Dinesh Karthik had suggested was to look at it in 2 halves. So you first look at the overs 1, 2 and 3, and then you look at the overs of 4, 5 and 6. Because generally if you have a new ball swing bowler, he would bowl 2 overs up front and possibly then later on. And that means that more often than not, instead of having just 2 bowlers in the power play, you are going to have a third bowler in that power play period. And so keeping this ideology in mind was what eventually helped the RCB decide that they needed Josh Hazlewood, but along with Josh Hazlewood, they also needed a Bhuvneshwar Kumar and a Yash Dayal to be able to bowl in that power play period. Another very interesting viewpoint was to look at some of the players and see what their ceilings are like. Now, oftentimes when we look at cricketing data, what happens is that we tend to look at players' averages and strike rates and we discard them based on how the average or strike rate might not be as high as some of the others. But something really interesting that Bobat repeatedly spoke about was what a player's ceiling was like. And by this, he was referring to how good a player can be on the days that they take off. And the best example here was a Liam Livingstone, who with the bat has average numbers when you look at strike rate as well as average together. But if you look at the ceilings he has, as in whenever he takes off, is in good form and is able to get those high scores, that is where his potential was truly shown. Livingstone was the kind of player who, although might not be averaging a lot and might not be getting those scores consistently, every time he was able to get a big score, he would generally go on and make it big. He would get a 40 ball 100 or get a 30 ball 90, and purely for that kind of impact, RCB were inclined to have Liam Livingstone in the middle order and Jacob Bethel as an able backup for him. From there on, the last couple of things that the RCB think tank wanted to make sure they cover was the finishing slot as well as the spinners. Now, with the finishing slot, it was an interesting decision because they initially wanted to ensure that they have Tim David as their priority. As it turned out, both Tim David as well as Romario Shepherd were in the same lot during the auction. Now, what they'd also spoken about was in a case where they don't get Tim David, they would go for Romario Shepherd. However, as it worked out for RCB, they were able to snatch both of these players for a relatively cheap price. And when we come to the spinners, it is no surprise that RCB wanted to bid for Krunal Pandya. Now, he's tended to go under the radar a lot of times, but Krunal Pandya is one of those bowlers who in the history of the IPL has never had a season where he's gone above a run rate of 8. And so in the minds of the RCB think tank, Krunal Pandya was always going to be the number one spinner. From there, it was about who can come in to complement him. They'd spoken about a Yuzvendra Chahal as first preference and a Suyash Sharma as the backup. Now, of course, Chahal was a very sought after player and they couldn't get Chahal, but they then got in Suyash Sharma, who has done really well for them this season. And so through that RCB documentary, the one thing we were able to understand is that there was a lot of strategizing, a lot of combinations, a lot of scenarios that was spoken about in terms of how to go about building a team, in terms of what to do in case of the auction strategy and what their backups would look like. Now, it is no secret that most of these things did pan out correctly for the RCB, and you can attribute it to a lot of things, right from preparedness to also luck and timing. All of these things worked out, and RCB were mostly able to build out the kind of side that they had initially envisioned. Now, this of course is on the strategy and the team building part, but from there for RCB and the players to still turn out and put in the kind of performances that they did is something that we have to talk about. And this is where we will talk about RCB's batting as well as bowling. Now, in terms of the batting, it has definitely been a contribution from every single aspect and every single batter that there is. And this is also something that's reflective in the numbers. When we firstly look at the batting rates, this has been RCB's second best season ever in terms of their scoring rate. RCB this season has scored at 9.7 runs to the over, which is second only to their previous season in IPL of 2024. Not only that, but their batters have also been supremely confident as well as consistent. This is RCB's second best year in terms of the average runs scored per wicket. That number stands at 33.73 runs per wicket, and what that basically means is that each batter who's coming out to bat, irrespective of how many wickets are gone, is able to contribute 33 runs to the side. Now, to put this in a grander scheme of things and to give you a perspective, if each batter is coming out and being able to contribute 30 plus runs, that is putting your team in a really good situation in most of the games that you play. And when you talk about the openers, it's almost taken for granted that the RCB openers will do well, but still for Virat Kohli to continue putting in the kind of performances he had, and for them to get in Phil Salt and compliment Kohli the way he did, that is something that a lot of people might discard. This was RCB's third best season in terms of the opening pair's batting averages. That number stood at 44.5, and that meant that in any of the games, either of these openers would give you at least 44 runs. And in this ever-evolving landscape of T20 cricket, RCB is also a side that in the terms of openers have been able to keep up with the increasing strike rates. The 2025 season has been RCB's best season in terms of a strike rate that they've had for opening pairs. With a collective strike rate of 157, this has been the most that RCB openers have ever struck at. But perhaps the biggest improvement that this RCB side has seen has to be in that lower order. The numbers 5, 6 and 7 have been solid for the RCB team this season and in a number of different aspects. Not only has this been the best season for RCB's finishers in terms of their average, but also in terms of their strike rate. With an average of 38.3 and a strike rate of 169, the numbers 5, 6 and 7, or your finishers in the likes of Tim David, Jitesh Sharma and Romario Shepherd, have all stepped up in different occasions during the tournament. And another fun fact is that the RCB finishers have come out to bat in the least number of innings for any of RCB's seasons. What this means is that the top and middle order are usually able to get the job done, but in a case where they aren't, that's the only time when the finishers have had to come in, and this has been just 29 innings, the least ever in the history of the IPL for RCB. But the consistency of these finishers is something that definitely needs to be lauded, and also their efforts to not only get to a 20 or a 30, but for them to be able to convert that to 50 in times of need. This has been the one season where the finishers at 5, 6 and 7 have been able to get the most 50 plus scores for RCB ever in their history in any of the seasons. With 5 50s in just 29 innings, this is by far the highest number of half centuries that any of these finishers have gotten for RCB. And this holds true even in the tournament amongst other teams, where RCB has the most number of 50s as a batting order as compared to any of the other batting orders. With 22 50s in this tournament, RCB has the most 50 plus scores in the IPL 2025 season. And this means that on the batting front, RCB has just gotten better and better at almost every aspect as compared to the previous seasons. And this means that the team management did a really good job at plugging the holes, and also the players did an excellent job at executing their plans and ensuring that they were performing for the team. And coming to the bowling front, the couple of big concerns were whether or not these bowlers will be able to take wickets and whether or not they'll be able to defend runs or go at lesser runs per over as at least compared to the opposition. And this is also something that got fulfilled. In terms of the bowling strike rate, which is the number of balls taken to get a wicket, this was RCB's 4th best season ever. With a strike rate of just 18.7 balls per wicket, RCB were ensuring that they had wicket taking options not just at the top but throughout their bowling innings. Apart from this was also the 3rd best bowling strike rate in this season amongst all of the other teams. And when you come to economy rates, obviously you can't compare this across seasons simply because of how much the game has changed. But if you compare RCB to the other teams in just IPL 2025, they've had the 2nd best economy rate of just 9.11. Their new ball bowlers have all done extremely well. The likes of Yash Dayal, Josh Hazelwood and Bhuvneshwar Kumar have all gotten a lot of wickets up front. In fact, the new ball bowlers for RCB have been the 3rd highest in terms of the wickets that have been taken, with them taking 31 wickets in this season. Not only that, but they've also had the 2nd best bowling average at just 28.3 and they've had the best economy rate of 8.9. This means that not only are the RCB new ball bowlers bowling well, but they're also getting wickets. They're giving lesser runs away per wicket as compared to some of the other teams. But most importantly, while getting these wickets, they've also been able to keep it extremely tight up front. And even if you look at only RCB's pacers alone, they've had the best strike rate this season, striking at 16.5 balls per wicket. That's a wicket almost every 3rd over by a pace bowler that is bowling for the RCB lineup. They've also aided this wicket taking ability with the ability to be frugal in the number of runs that they give, with the 2nd best economy rate of just 9.36 runs to the over for pacers. And essentially this is what it is. This is the reason that the RCB team have had such a good season, is simply because not only have they been able to well round that squad and make it extremely balanced, but a lot of their players have stepped up at the right times. Everyone has put their hands up throughout different parts of the tournament, and most importantly, data has been put to good use. Now throughout the videos that we make, we do talk about a lot of these stats. We talk about averages and strike rates and whatnot, but at the end of the day, what is also important is not only do the players need to step up, but also the combinations that you bring together with the data that you have is something that is much appreciable. And this is where, with a blend of youth, experience and all of the numbers to back their performances, the RCB think tank and the management have done a great job at assembling one of the best ever RCB teams, possibly the greatest up until now. This has been a video on the Royal Challengers Bangalore, what has worked for them and how it has worked for them. If you like this video, definitely share it with your friends. Leave your comment down below on what you think about this year's RCB campaign, and most importantly, subscribe if you haven't already. If you haven't checked out Smart Wifi, definitely go to our link in the description to learn more. Thank you so much for watching. Peace.